not enough people collaborate. I think people get caught up in competition or scarcity. They get caught up in the idea of, well, I can't share my audience because they're doing something similar to me, and they may go join their mastermind instead of mine, or they may go buy their course instead of mine. And I'm telling you, that type of mentality is where you'll get stuck because you only have so many pieces of the puzzle.
In today's episode, we have special guest, friends, and power couple, Chris and Lori Harder. Lori Harder has built 3 separate 7-figure businesses. She is a best-selling author of A Tribe Called Bliss. She runs a Forbes Top 11 business podcast called Earn Your Happy, and much, much more. Now, Chris, on the other hand, is also the host of a top-rated podcast, The Chris Harder Show. He uses his platform to empower entrepreneurs to become unapologetic in their pursuit of wealth and generous in their giving. Now, Chris and Lori always say, when good people make good money, they do great things. And we are so excited to have Chris and Lori on the podcast today. We're going to be talking about the traits that successful people do, the daily practices, making sure you're getting in the room, and much, much more. So with that being said, let's start the show. Hey, welcome to the Insurance Buzz. We are your hosts, Michael and Courtney Weaver. We have special guests, friends of ours today, Chris and Lori Harder. How are you?
What's going on, guys?
So good.
We're
so
awesome.
excited to be here. Thank you for having us.
I'm like over here geeking out. I'm shaking. This is like such a full circle moment. Lori, I don't know if I've ever told you this story, but I read your book. I brought it because I'm totally fangirling because I love you so much. I read your book in 2018 and I started stalking you obsessively and sending you messages and following you. And then full circle, here we are on a podcast. We were in Chris's mastermind. We got to know you guys. You got pulled behind Stevie on the wakeboard. I'm like, I love this so much. This is such a moment for me. So I'm so excited that you guys are here.
This is how life is supposed to work, though, right? You find somebody through a tool, and because you needed that tool, now you're kind of in alignment because they created or they needed that same tool. And because you're in alignment, then it's easy to fall into a relationship. And that's how we ended up here friends. So it's meant to be.
Yeah. Oh my God. You never know when this is just for anybody listening. If you're being called to write something, to do something, a lot of times, yes, it's because you want to do it, but you have no idea the blessing of the people that you're going to be connected to. Thank God, or I would not have been wakeboarding behind your boat, and that is what I live for. So I'm glad that all roads in writing that book put me through all of that to get behind your boat. So
Not only did you wakeboard, you freaking crushed it.
I know.
You're the first person I've ever pulled that just like, boop, right up on the board.
You had your swimsuit
crushed
on. I was like, oh shit. And then you like killed it. And I'm like, oh my God. And then I see that you snowboard and I'm like, all right, I got to really be friends with her because she's goals all the way around. Chris, you are
I was
too.
just
I love you
excited
too.
there was other people who wanted to wakeboard. So yeah, this is
Lori has to be busy at all times,
Yeah,
or
it's
she's
true.
not happy. So there's no just sitting around or laying around. It's wakeboarding, surfing, etc., or nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. Now, you guys just got back from, I want to dive into this because you just got back from a mastermind in Napa and it looked amazing. And some of the people in the room were Jay Shetty, Lewis Howes, Ed Milet, obviously you two, Mel Robbins. I mean, these are Brendan Burchard. These are the people when you're talking about entrepreneurs, influencers, people that are really changing the world. So first of all, how did you even get in that room?
I mean, this is such a good question because we're getting this question a lot, and I think it's a couple things. I think number one, it is putting your head down for so long, doing something until you build a platform that can actually add value to a room like that. And to be honest, I was still in that room going, questioning, are you adding value? Can you add value? And I think that's the secret to any success at all in any business is when you put your head down long enough to start to create things that can add value to other people, whether that is platforms, whether that's a service, whether that's a product, whether that's information that you now know from doing what you've done for so long that can help someone else's business. And also, I think it was just this perfect storm of also being brought up, having amazing people who brought our names up, brought my name up in the room when it came time about, Brendan was launching a podcast network. And I had put my head down now for, what has it been? Did we just figure out 6 years?
Yeah, 6 years.
6 years with my podcast. I just celebrated my 1,000th episode. And, I started that podcast not knowing, not getting paid for it, not knowing if I would get paid, not knowing if anyone was listening, nobody listening in the beginning, right? Mm-hmm. And it was one of those things that I just showed up consistently for 6 years, almost 7 years, 3 times a week, sometimes 4 times a week I was doing it. And just finally getting those numbers up, getting those listeners really listening to people and what they want, and getting noticed for it. And I think that it's so many different factors that go into that, right? But I do think it's putting your head down long enough that you create a platform that creates a lot of value and gets recognized. And I think when we start putting too much focus on what is everyone else doing and trying to do something that other people are doing, that's really where it was easy for me to get caught up, where it's like, should I be launching these other courses over and over? Should I be doing these different things? And I found a platform where I could thrive, where I really felt like I fit personally. And I think that's a really huge, important factor as well, is where do you personally show up the best? Because on social, even social is tough for me sometimes, but now I'm honing in on social a bit more. But really allowing yourself to say, what is the platform or the place, or is it in-person events like where I am willing to put in the work for 5 to 10 years to show up consistently a few times a week, put my head down and just enjoy it and focus on the community. And that's really what I did. And I think that is partially how we ended up in the room.
I love, number one, 1,000 episodes. Like, that's fucking amazing. Like, that's wild.
Incredible. And Chris, how many episodes do you have on your podcast too?
God, I'm so bad at milestones. I know I'm in the sevens, so 700 something right now, but I'm so bad at milestones. That's one thing that neither one of us are great at, is like celebrating milestones. 1,000th episode came up and she's like, oh God, I did nothing special for it. So
bad.
That's an area we could probably get better, but the consistency is where we thrive. We'll just put our head down and grind and grind and grind. And you wake up one day and you're like, oh gosh, this is number 750. Oh gosh, this is number 1,000.
I want to add how important that is to actually celebrate it and celebrate it publicly as well, because sometimes when you put your head down and you do find those platforms, people don't know what you're doing. So what ended up happening is I had hit a milestone with how many downloads I was getting. I think it was last January. I had gone up to, it had spiked to over 2 million listeners per month. And I had done a reel about it. And I had never talked about where I was at on the podcast publicly. And what happened is I had a bunch of people start to take notice, and other, guests wanted to be on. And also I had people who were also fellow podcasters, doing amazing things, going, wait, that is huge. And you need to start talking about this more. And what happened is that conversation kind of rippled through a few opportunities where they were like, hey, who are these other podcasters? And because people started to know that it was doing well, it started to be brought up in these rooms full of opportunity. So if I wouldn't have, quote unquote, tooted my own horn, which I don't normally do, but now I think is very, very important, and I will continue to do, and you'll probably see more of it, is because if we don't do that, you guys, if we don't celebrate, then people don't know where you're at, and they don't know that they want to, these big people who have a book coming out don't know that they need to be on your show because you have so many listeners and you can move their book. And I think that is so vital, no matter where you are, whether it's a small milestone or a huge milestone, celebrate publicly frequently.
Yeah, that's so good. My mom says, if you don't toot your own horn, no one else will.
Isn't that the truth?
There's so much truth.
Toot. I might toot your horn. It's going to be awkward when it happens, but
I'm tooting yours too, so we're just gonna let it go. That's just part of it.
No, I love that. And so, Courtney, in talking about this, and I want you to dive in, because you hit on it when you got in that room and you said you're even like, man, how can I add? You almost start questioning yourself, do I even belong here? So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that and dive into that.
Oh my God, you got to tell them the lunch table story.
Oh my God,
you guys, when you get in rooms like that, you really do feel imposter syndrome. Am I going to have anything to land? Am I going to have anything to say that's even going to land on them? And the short lesson is this. There were so many things as the 3 days went on where I was like, oh, I've got something to add. Oh, I've got some input that really did land and really did help. You can't understate your value enough. You just have to get in the room and not second guess yourself from sharing. Another relative story to that was when, years ago, I think 7-8 years ago now, when we were in our first mastermind with Lewis Howes, I had gotten in that mastermind because Lori was on fire and I was just behind the scenes helping her grow her business. And so I felt like I wasn't doing anything special at the time. I was in between my corporate transition and what I'm doing today. And so I remember going into that room thinking, God, this is a whole bunch of 7-figure earners. I've got no business being here. I'm just kind of, pushing some buttons behind the scenes for Lori. And I went from thinking I had no value to offer in that mastermind to being voted MVP after our first meeting in there by all the peers for having the most value to lend. And then I've seen that play out exactly the same in the masterminds that we run. So you just have to get in the room. You just have to speak up. And you can't be attached to if you're saying what you're saying has value or not. You just got to put it out there. But you got to tell them the lunch table story.
Oh, I mean, no matter what, you're going to feel uncomfortable if you're in the right room, in my personal opinion. If you're super comfortable and you're like, oh, I'm crushing this, then you're probably in a room where, yes, you're adding value, but you're not getting the value that you need for your growth. So, there's two very different types of rooms that we need to be in. We need to be in those ones where we can add a lot of value because that's important to be able to show up as a mentor and it makes us feel good and all the things. But then you do need to be in the rooms where you're like, oh shit, I'm really not sure if I belong here yet. Like I am feeling all sorts of ways. And then I definitely was feeling that. And I think that is such a beautiful place to be because it's where we can practice and go, oh, this is what it feels like when you're stretching. This is what it feels like to be shown a new level. And, when we walked in, I think that's the most exciting part is knowing a lot of the things that we were hearing and listening to, we weren't doing yet. And we weren't implementing. And we realized, oh my God, there is a whole other world to grow to. And, we're in this room with people who clearly they can walk in and people know their value. They're like, okay, platform, podcast, books, they make this much or whatever, because it's all very public knowledge. And so if you're walking into that room and you're another, let's just say, high performer like that, where do you think you're going to want to go? You want to go and you want to seek out other really high performers that you know exactly what they're doing. And so for Chris and I to walk in and for some people to not really be familiar with us, of course, people aren't going to gravitate towards us. They're going to gravitate towards the people who are just on fire right now, which is amazing. But it was one of the first rooms that we were like, oh my goodness, Chris, we need to be in more rooms like this because we're used to people wanting to come up and hear what we have to say. And when we sat down to lunch, our table, Chris and I went and got food first, because I don't know, we were by there's 5 tables and nobody was in there yet. And of course, Chris and I were the first in the lunchroom because we were, starving and we
Inner
had
fat
food.
kids.
And so we sit down at the table and everyone's slowly coming in and not sitting at our table. And I was like, are you feeling as bad as I am right now, Chris? Are you feeling terrible too? He's like, this is really, really hard. Okay, it's all right. Okay, we're not cool. That's okay. And so we were like, okay, next year we're going to have so much value to add that we're going to be the table that everybody can't wait to sit by. And by the way, people were just kind of gravitating. They all knew each other and things like that. But at the same time, it was okay, we definitely have more value to give, to add, to share, and publicly, share that we're doing all of these different things. And I think it was such a cool place to be, to go, this is so awesome to be right here where we know so many other people are when they walk in these, mastermind rooms or when they go and try to level up in a room. And honestly, I mean, these people truly we're so lucky to be in that room because most people were levels and levels and levels and years ahead of us. So I think that it was such an awesome opportunity to look at the growth that we have room for and view it that way. We did not let it be something we felt bad about. We did not let it be we literally joked about it and we're like, okay, cool, great. I'd be sitting at that table with Mel Robbins too. That'd be the table I ran to as well. Duh,
Well, I want to say something. It's not luck. I mean, you saying that we were lucky to be in that room. Obviously there's a reason that you're in that room. But also, I want to speak to the fact that you guys, instead of absorbing that and going to a different place, you guys looked at that as an opportunity to grow. And you looked at each other and you were open about, I feel like shit right now. I feel like I'm in third grade and nobody wants to sit at the table with me. Like, I think that just speaks to the dynamic of your relationship of saying, this sucks, but I don't want to be here next year. What do we do now?
Total middle school wounds.
That's
Get
what we
opened
said.
up,
All
right?
back up. Like, damn, dude. Like,
Start sniffing the armpit. Make sure you don't stink. Like, what's going on here, man?
God, there's so much trauma. I was even listening to that story like, oh, shit. I feel that moment. We used to, we'd have to walk by in the cafeteria. So we were in like fifth grade and like the seventh and eighth graders would sit there and they just holler stuff at us as we got our food. I'm like, as you were talking, I'm like, oh God, it's coming back.
But
Like,
I
that's a
appreciate
big
you all
moment.
being open and sharing that, because you all are wildly successful. And so I think all of us sometimes, at least myself, deal with imposter syndrome when you get into rooms and things like that. And so I appreciate you sharing that, because that's, it's just.
And by the way, if anybody's like freaked out by that happens, it's kind of like, to be honest with you, everyone was so overly friendly. It was wild. I was blown away by how freaking friendly people were and how much they were interested. That was just like such a beautiful moment
It's
for
just a funny
us. It
moment,
was just
yeah.
a funny moment for us that we were like, yeah, okay, this is cool. And we get to grow. But I do want people to know, when you put yourself in those rooms that, sorry, when your partner like does like a nervous, it's not a nervous tick, it's an energy. He was like shaking the chair so much because his leg is going so hard. I love the behind the scenes. So it's like knowing those places are going to welcome you. I really believe that. I believe that you're going to have these insanely awesome moments, and you are going to have those moments that like trigger that doubt, or you are in the wrong room. So I think it's both, and you can know that it's going to offer you both.
Yeah, I think that's so
Absolutely.
good.
So, it's being in the room, I have a question. Like, 3 successful traits. Like, you all are wildly successful. You are friends in a wildly successful circle. Like, if you had to narrow down, and I may be asking too much here, but like 3 specific traits that you would say, we have it, other wildly successful folks in our circle have it. Like, what would you say are the 3 things that pop into your minds right now? Bam, this is it.
One of them for me is collaboration. Like, collaborating is the shortcut for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Finding other people that you can share platforms with, finding other people where they can do the part that you may not be good at, finding other people that are willing to lift you up when it's your time to shine or launch something, and then vice versa. Not enough people collaborate. I think people get caught up in competition or scarcity. They get caught up in the idea of, well, I can't share my audience because they're doing something similar to me, and they may go join their mastermind instead of mine, or they may go buy their course instead of mine. And I'm telling you, that type of mentality is where you'll get stuck, because you only have so many pieces of the puzzle. And other people out there who are performing at the same level or even better than you, they have the missing pieces to your puzzle. And if you don't collaborate, you're forever going to have this kind of incomplete puzzle that's pretty good. You kind of see the vision. It's okay, but it's not this masterpiece that it could be. So collaboration is the first common thread that I saw in that room. Everybody booking everybody on their shows at the end and making sure, oh, you got a book launch coming up. Okay, we're getting it on everyone's calendars. Here's what we're going to do to support this book launch. Or you've got this project coming out. Collaboration for sure.
I love that one. I think that's vital. I think that adding value without anything in return, like really getting it on your radar, the people who have added value to your life, and looking at, okay, they have a book launch coming out. How can I add value without even asking them what they need? And I think the next level to adding value is anticipating their needs and not even saying, hey, what is it that I can help you with? Because honestly, like, people are so busy, they don't even, they're like, like, sharing would be awesome, whatever, but putting something together that they don't even have to ask. It's actually something I'm working on right now, is going around the room that I was just in mentally and saying, okay, how can I add value to them without them even asking? Like, what is a way that I could show up, when their book launches? Maybe I do something for literally 2 weeks. What if I shared about it every day for 2 weeks? Like right now with Growth Day with Brendan, he's added so much to my life that his app, I'm like, how can I incorporate sharing his app every day and getting more users to his app? Because that's really important to him. how can I share this app every single day with a link to like get more users on there and incorporate it into just my daily routine, and like not even have him ask me for anything. Like, let's just show up and do that. And, whether it's book launches, whether it's someone's actual physical launch that you're like, hey, I want these people to be my running partners, or I really want these people to know, like, I'm willing to do X, Y, and Z with nothing in return, like to truly have zero expectation around it and know that good things are going to come to you if you're doing this. You don't have to expect them, but they just are. People are going to see you as someone who likes to promote and give back. And truly, I have firsthand like scenarios where this has happened, where people are like, hey, Lori's always sharing about people's books on her launches. Like, and I know that, Lori's like doing something with her podcast. So how can we get her podcast to grow? All of these different things by just honestly showing up in that way. So it will be returned. It will get noticed eventually. And sometimes it's noticed in such a different way for such a different thing than you could have ever imagined. That's even better than what you actually wanted for yourself. So I think that's number 2, is just adding so much value without asking people and figuring it out yourself.
Playing that long game is what I would call that. And then the third thing that I've noticed is consistency at volume. So not just consistency, but consistency at volume. I'll give you an example. Lewis Howes has not missed a podcast, has not missed a week in 10 years of podcasting. And at volume, he now has several different channels where he chops up and repurposes past podcasts into daily minis and all these other things, right? So consistency at volume. Another good example is Brendan Bouchard. He's got his new app, the Growth Day app. And to help that thing grow, he's doing a daily fire, which is like a great 10-minute mini podcast.
20 to 30 minutes,
right?
Every day.
Teaching every day. People don't realize how busy this man is and how many companies he has, but he still finds time to record 365 of these daily fires. When you think, at that point, you don't have to do that anymore. Or Gary Vee or Jay Shetty, they're putting out 8 to 10 pieces of content on their platforms per day, every single day, not once in a while to get some traction and then they back off a little bit. But consistency at volume is probably the biggest piece that will make you pull out in front of the pack versus everyone else who's just kind of fighting for a couple of eyeballs.
I love all 3 of those. Those are amazing. Collaboration. But the consistency and volume, that one's really standing out to me. That's, I think, discipline in anything in life, but you're also adding the volume aspect to it, which takes your work to an entirely another level.
Well, and it calls you to be somebody, a different version of yourself, because you can be consistent, but to put out, a podcast every single day when you have a 14-hour day, or to put out 8 to 10 pieces of content that take a lot of work to prepare and edit and all of that every single, like that requires you to be a completely different person.
It really does. And it's a great separator, to be honest. It's going that extra mile. What's the saying that people have said a million times? The extra mile has no competition. I'm butchering it right now, but because everyone else is a mile back. And there really is truth there, is the difference between being consistent and consistency at volume, which is my biggest takeaway walking out of that room. And you'll see me start doing a lot of changes around that. That is truly the game changer. And here's the great part. It's something that anyone can do. Right? Anyone can build a system. Anyone can repurpose stuff. Anybody can try a little bit harder. Anybody can accomplish consistency at volume. Most people aren't willing to.
I think the only thing in the way with, because him and I, that's definitely a play that we're doing more of this year, is how can we be out there more and how can we take what we're already doing and, optimize what we're already doing. So we're not doing a ton more work, but it appears that we are. And I think most of it is just coming up with a plan, and then also the resistance around it. Like, I think the resistance that we allow ourselves to feel around it and the time spent thinking about it is way worse than actually just doing it and getting your plan in place. Because this is the first year that I feel like we're getting like a good flow and a content flow and finding the people who can help us, which, by the way, takes like 3 to 4 months to kind of find your team and find your flow, meaning how do you even like to put content out? How do you even, where do you start? Does it go just for an example, and this is what people in the room were doing that really helped us. Like if you have a text community, maybe you start with writing your 30 texts to your text community for the month. And then from your text, those turn into reels that you just say the same exact quote into a talking reel. And then if that reel does well, then you put that on a quote tile for the next month. So now you have like technically like 2 months of content that you can create from all of these different things. And if you want, you can also see how the different things perform before you put them out. So that's something that Chris and I are doing, is going, where can we start? Like, where's a good spot for us that feels really good to start, putting our content all in one place that doesn't make us feel like we have so much resistance around, oh my God, I have to do all of this for social. I have to do all of this for the podcast, which, by the way, if one of those quotes performs amazing, or 5 of them perform amazing, then that's also what you talk about on your podcast the next month. So it's like, whoa, this one really hit. I'm going to go hard on this topic and this topic. And so I think that is taking down a lot of the pain that we had around showing up frequently, is we just were doing it wrong. We weren't doing what all these other people have a plan for. So being in the room and hearing, oh, there's an actual formula, efficiency to be very effective in order to do this, so that we're not feeling all of this pain around constantly showing up. And I do just think him and I are on this thing this year where we're trying to notice where we feel frustration or resistance and just remind each other hey, we can actually keep doing this or show up for the same thing without this feeling. It's a choice. It's a true choice to be annoyed, frustrated, be swearing, throw a tantrum before we have to record. That we could do the same thing, get the same end result, have the same awesome podcast without all the bullshit before and all the frustration. And that's simply a choice of how we feel approaching it.
The new puppy's been really good for practicing that.
Oh my God. I love your new puppy because we talked about this before. So they have they're sheepadoodles, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So
Bananas and bonkers.
Okay. Bananas, I only know. And that dude will hump the shit out of,
anything.
And so I have seen this tiny bonkers sheepadoodle that is now dominating his older brother. And I'm like, this is karma.
Payback.
Is so
Perfect
great.
payback.
This is it's so good. I'm also glad to hear that you guys are working through the tantrums and before you get, because there's so many times where you're like, holy shit, and then you're like, all right, game face, here we go.
Yep.
That's part of it. And so how are you guys even what are you saying in those moments? Because I'm curious, because I still have those resistance moments before we do those things.
I think the first and most important thing is Lori's not afraid to call it out. So you get what you tolerate. And she just stopped tolerating it out of both of us. She just decided, hey, listen, if we're going to add kids into the mix, and if we're going to go to this next level with these businesses, if we're going to do all these things, we can either do it in a really shitty, crappy feeling way, or we can do the exact same actions, because one thing we never not do is the right actions. So we're going to take the action. So why don't we do it in a more elegant way? And if we're going to decide to do that, then that's not a once in a while thing or a kind of thing. That is I'm going to call you out every single time that you are slipping back into doing it in a shitty way. And, I think you need somebody, either you to yourself or a partner or a coach or somebody, to not be afraid to shine the spotlight on you every single time you're doing something that's out of alignment with what you want to be doing.
And I feel so annoying doing it. I feel so annoying, nagging him. But I'm so committed to not raising shitty kids. So and I'm saying that for real, because I see, so we have, some friends, Jenna, Kutcher and Drew, and their kids are we were around them a bunch, and they're so calm. And they just manage, they handle things so well as a family. And I was like, Jenna, what do you do? Why do you think they're so calm? And she's like, we're just very calm. Our energy is very calm. Anything that happens, we just try to be neutral. And I was like, oh, that's not Chris and I right now. Little things will happen, and it's like a fit or a tantrum.
It's a Chris fit.
And I literally pictured these kids not coping well with easy daily tasks. And I was like, this is not a favor for our children. This is actually going to raise adults who really struggle.
Frantic.
Because it's even when Chris has the most amazing things about him. I'm talking mind-blowing amazing things. And there's this one thing that when I met him, it was these like little blow ups. And I would point them out to him, and he got so much better. But I think now that I'm thinking of bringing like so much better, but to the place where I can kind of like block out the little things or whatnot. But now that I'm thinking this is our next level, now that we're thinking of bringing kids in. So something that wasn't a big deal to me and I was letting go because I was like, well, he's amazing. These little things, I can ignore them. I'm now really aware that in a parent, and me too, it wore off on me. Like I noticed I started doing it too, like a little bit more. Like if he's doing it, I'm going to be pissed too. So I'm going to kind of like throw this fit, and fits are easier. I'm going to be honest. Like it's easier to be pissed off than it is to like hold it in. So just now that it's becoming very real that we're going to have children, I was like, we're going to raise kids who are not going to be able to function in the world easily. This is going to be hard. Things are going to feel hard for them. They're going to, have this blessed life, but at the same time, they're going to like be challenged, and other people are not going to appreciate this about them or be patient with them like we are. And it was just like that realization that when you bring other people into the picture, because we can manage it obviously in the workplace and with team and all that stuff. But when you bring other people into your life, like where are you going to end up paying for passing on this really bad habit that doesn't help them cope with life? And that's when it just got really real to me. Like, okay, now I'm okay with nagging because this is going to be in our face. Like it's going to be in our face hardcore with children. So.
Well, and I love the fact that you guys have a good enough relationship to have the conversations and be open with calling each other out on the shit that you're like, man, come on, like we got to get our shit together.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of our listeners can relate to that because there's a lot of couples that are either working together or they're both entrepreneurs. So Chris, I want to go back. You said there was a phrase that you said where you said, I was just pushing buttons for Lori. Mm-hmm. And that was when you were getting into the room with Lewis House. And a question I get a lot is, what's my role? If my partner is like, they're doing their thing, what is my role? So how did you navigate kind of your role and your responsibility as a husband and as a partner, but also as an entrepreneur in your business relationship too?
It's interesting. We always go through phases in our life. And I was going through a phase where I had just had a decade-long grind in banking and flew up through the ranks and had all sorts of success. And then when the recession hit, lost that career and had to start entirely over. And starting over had completely stripped me of any identity and confidence and all these other things. And so I was in a season of being okay with being behind the scenes, not being out front sprinting, and pushing buttons and just being a supporter at that point. And that season went on for probably a solid couple of years, 2-3 years. And then I started to get that itch back where, wait a minute, I want to do my thing. I want to have my brand. It's like I got recharged and I was ready to go again. And I wanted to get off the bench. And I think honoring those 2 seasons, because when I was burnt out and didn't know what I wanted to do, I didn't pretend to want to be out front. I didn't cause any like, oh, Lori, I got to be out front too for ego. I was okay just honoring that season. But then once I got that itch to be like, hey, babe, I need to do something for myself. I need to like be out front again. I've got something I want to go build. I was also in integrity to honor that and not be afraid to say, hey, I'm stepping out. You go your way, I'll go my way. And by the way, this is one of the best things that you can do is if you're working together as a couple, you've got to have separate lives or you become very uninteresting and you just end up with more to bicker about. And I don't know when I started, but maybe 5 years ago or so, 6 years ago, I started doing a great job of going out and building a separate life, not just through building a separate brand, but finding my own set of friends and scheduling in guys' trips and making sure that I'm doing things that are interesting to me so that when I come home, I actually have something to talk about. And it wasn't just the 2 of us in the family room all day long seeing the exact same things.
Yeah, that was really big for me. He did a better job than me. And I was like writing books about connecting with other people and creating these groups of women. And while I definitely was doing that, he he took it to the next level with just really connecting at different guys' dinners and creating these opportunities for other guys to get together and guys' trips like twice a year. And it added so much value to my life that now I'm trying to keep up with him because of how frequently he's in new rooms. And I think that's really important too. You actually just heard, it's funny, he was going to stay home with me this last week. And he ended up going out to a dinner that he wasn't going to go to because he heard Grant Cardone say, hey, you guys who are staying at home and keeping yourself comfortable, that's not how your business grows. And he's like, oh shit. Like he literally turned on social and heard that. And I was like, it is true. It's really important. And obviously we do the check-ins like, hey, how are we? Do you need me? If I would have said, hey, I need you at home, he would have stayed home for me, of course, because we have those. You can obviously still go out in the world and have these check-ins and have that sacred time of what you need fulfilled as well. But I just think it's such an important example of if you guys are working together at all to go and have your own friend groups. And, you know, women and men process very, very differently, and have the spaces where he can go and talk about the things that I am not interested in. I can go process the shit out of my problems 1,000 times and analyze them, and he doesn't bother me about it. And so I think that's a huge recognition to say, like, even have that conversation together. If you have even a business partner or, you know, your husband or wife or whatever, and say, hey, what is something I'm not fulfilling for you that you need to go out and have fulfilled? Because it's like the knowing that we are not going to be everything for each other. And that's great. Like, it's impossible to do that. But where do you need to go get this gap filled out in the world that's missing for you? And for me, it was like just being able to process with another woman, like another girlfriend who processes the same way that I do, like being able to talk about things a bunch of times over. And for him, he's one and done. He's like, I don't want to hear it anymore. I'm over it. Here's the solution. Do it, or, you know, whatever. And I was like, no. I need a full week on this one. So
yeah, I gotta repeat myself 34 times.
It's made our relationship so much better because now I don't get angry with him. Now I can like go figure my own stuff out on my own time. It's so great.
You know, here's one more thing I want to add to. One of the most important parts of the answer is we've always created containers to be able to check in and talk about these things. You know, whether it's our daily walks that are a non-negotiable, that's an hour-long container for these things to come up. When I first came home from corporate America and was pushing buttons for Lori behind the scenes, our communication was tragically horrible because I came from a very masculine, goal-driven type of career where I wanted to take the shortest route to a message possible. And if what I was saying was right or wrong, it didn't matter because it wasn't being said in a way that could land on her. So we had to create a container where we said, this isn't working. Well, how do you want me to address you? What words do you want me to say? What tone do you want me to use? And then we role played it, like carved out times to role play it. It's always been these containers that we create to check in and have the important conversations. I think that's been the number one tool in us being able to work together.
We still use it. We actually just had a pretty good just conversation just about kind of the blowing up, like the fits, whatever. And I don't think that we would have gotten to where we are right now, where I really feel like we're both actually equally working on it if it wouldn't have been for all of our walks, because it took a few walks for him to even think he was doing it. Like he didn't actually even realize that he was doing like having something that affected my energy so much. And like, there are times where I don't realize I'm doing things that it's going to take a few walks to work through to be like, because we don't keep track, right? We don't write it down and say, when you said this and did this, it made me feel like this. It's like, sometimes you need these walks to kind of recall and talk about, well, clearly if I can't remember a time, but it is bothering me, there's something here. So it's important to me that we, keep looking at it, or maybe is it okay if when it happens in real time, I point it out. And stuff like that doesn't happen when you're sitting across from a table and you talk once a week. Like it just doesn't. I do believe you need to be kind of like side by side, walking out in nature, and it's got to be every day, because there is shit that comes up every single day. So, if you're busy parents, like even every other day, if you can create some sort of container where you guys have 20 or 30 minutes just to kind of talk about the day and where are you at and how are you feeling and what could I have done better, then I think that is going to be like game changing for your relationship.
We call it smoke, not fire, right? It's so much easier to put it out when it's smoke, not when it's turned into this raging fire. Although I was giggling before because when you're like, it's not like we write down everything that you do every day. Can you imagine if we had a Your Partner Sucks journal and like we would just review, okay, here's all the things that you pissed me off this week. That'd be awesome.
Oh man.
God.
I mean, I feel like there's a market for it.
Yeah, it sounds like a confessional. You have to do like 10 Hail Marys or something after that. My goodness.
Keeping the score.
Yeah, don't keep score.
Go ahead.
Well, your guys are already talking about something. Chris and Lori, thank you for sharing that. I know that you are so intentional with your relationships and you're intentional with each other. Is there anything else aside from your daily? I know you have something that you say when you get up first thing in the morning, and I would love for you guys to share that as well.
Yeah, I wake Lori up every single day to a mantra. I'm happier, healthier, wealthier, and more fit than I was yesterday. And I make her say it back to me like she means it. And I think at first it was kind of she wouldn't say it back, or I probably bugged her, waking her up to this. Now she says it back like a champ right away. And it's because I want us to be able to control what set of lenses we are seeing the day through before our feet hit the ground. Otherwise, you're just going to be in a reactionary state the whole time. Like, oh, this article, oh, this text, oh, this email. And that's going to determine what colored lenses you see the morning through instead of choosing one right away. Hey, I'm happier, healthier, wealthier, and more fit than I was yesterday. And being aligned with that set of lenses. Because if I was feeling that way and she wasn't, then that's going to chip away at my good feeling. So both starting out in that same point. That's just another example of these simple, insignificant things that add up to make a big difference.
So I want to geek out real fast. Do you have any other daily disciplines that you're like, these are non-negotiables we do either as individuals or as a couple every single day?
Definitely our walk. We try to always go on that non-negotiable walk, whether it's in the morning or in the evening or both, because we want that space. And we do something called the Power 9 every single day. So it's 3 gratitudes, 3 things we're excited about, 3 things we're manifesting. And then we added 1 wish well. So wish well is just for like, someone that what you want to see for them. You want to wish somebody in your life well.
And we say it out loud to each other, right? So I'm like, okay, 3 things I'm grateful for, this, and this. And then she has to say it. And then I say 3 things I'm excited for, this, and this. And she has to. And once again, it forces your mind to go somewhere, to go to a place of positivity and opportunity and what you want to accomplish for the day. And instead of just letting life dictate how you're going to feel, it's all about intentionality. It really is.
I think that's so good. I like the wish well. Like I like the 3 grateful, 3 excited, 3 manifesting. I think that's fantastic. But I also like to really think about, that like law of reciprocity. Like, who can I help today? Who can I serve today? How can I, put my energy towards them to really make their day better? I think that's so good.
And of course, physical movement. I don't think a single morning goes by where we don't get some kind of workout in before we start our day. We're all about, we call it protected time before anybody can get a hold of us unless you're like immediate friend or family. We make sure that we're doing all these things and filling our cup, getting the walk in, getting the workout in, listening to some positive propaganda in the morning. Lately Lori's been turning on Brendan Bouchard's Daily Fire every morning, making sure that we're filling our cups first before we start giving to other people. And it takes a while to do that, but we're diligent about making sure we have that space every single day.
I love that.
I do too. So before we wrap up, I do want to talk about the summer slowdown. So something that you guys were super intentional with is really like carving out your calendar and your time and making time for relationships. So when you think about this year, what are you excited about? Are you still doing the summer slowdown?
Oh yeah, getting back up at the lake house.
I'm not really doing the summer slowdown, but I'm definitely going to carve out business hours because it all fits. Like I really believe it all fits within those hours. When I look at how I'm working, if it's not fitting in there, then I'm probably just wasting a lot of time. And the more that I can have a container, the better I am. Because if I'm being honest, I probably only have 4 good hours in me. for very focused work, 3 to 4, if I'm being totally honest. And I think most people, if they are being really honest with themselves, also have that. It doesn't mean that that's all you're going to work. It means that those are going to be the hours that you put towards the important needle moving things. Like being on a podcast interview for me, those are not things that are very hard. Those are more fun things. So I can schedule that outside of the 4 hours. That can be more towards like 3 o'clock on, because after 3 o'clock, I'm not very creative. But for some reason, if I get on a podcast, my brain can still access that. It's things like that, like really starting to know yourself really well, going, if I want to move my business forward, what are the tough things that I need to show up for during these creative hours that are at my best, between like 11 and 3 for me. Those are like the best hours. What am I going to schedule here? What am I going to get done for the week? And what never gets put there? Like a Zoom meeting, not great to be put there if it's not something that's moving something forward. You know what I mean? It's like going to waste a bunch of energy and time. It's going to make you feel like, whoa. So starting to understand that is really important. But I think that containers for me, getting better and better with that is going to be exciting, actually, because it's going to allow me to have the summer that I want on the boat at 6 p.m., and wakeboarding until 8:30. All the things that refill my cup. That's what I'm excited about. I'm excited about getting more people up to the lake house. I'm excited about having you guys there. I'm excited about going deeper on the relationships that I want in my life long term. That's what's exciting me right now.
It's interesting because I'm still wildly intentional about the summer slowdown, which is just another word for a container, like Lori's talking about. But my team, me, Nick, Taylor, we literally plan this into our yearly schedule so that we're not booking events and we're not allowing, insignificant Zoom calls and all these other things to land during summer. And then I go in and I literally send Lori all these invitations to block off her Fridays. So she has to really think twice about booking something on a Friday. So we can have Fridays that turn into long weekends every single summer. So she, through my efforts, she gets smaller containers to do the same amount of work in that causes what I want, and that is this summer slowdown. And it's just a good example of working together. I know her strength would not be blocking off time for these things, yet still hoping they happen. My strength is I'm so passionate about like making memories and experiencing life that I know I need to go in and pre-plan and block these things off for us so that they're protected and that they do happen. And that's just knowing each other's strengths and how it's going to play out.
So good.
FEF Fridays, baby. Let's go.
FEF Fridays. That's what we did. We implemented that. So we started same kind of deal. We had to block off our schedule on Friday because if not, we would not get on the water. We would not spend time together. Yep. So I love that you guys do that. And you guys are such a great example of really being intentional with your time. So I want to share how you guys can listening, how you can follow Chris and Lori. So they do both have podcasts that are absolutely fantastic. Lori's podcast is Earn Your Happy, and Chris is the Chris Harder Show. But what other projects can people be a part of to support you? Because you guys have been phenomenal this whole podcast.
We did a opt-in for our Power 9 if people want to get it. So if they want to get the Power 9, that we did a whole like PDF and why you do it and all the fun stuff. So, if you want to get that, you can text the word power to 310-496-8363. That's 310-496-8363. And you can text the word power. So now you guys can join in on the thing that we do every single day that truly we feel like it's one of the things that has changed our life.
So good.
And I'm always just hanging on Instagram. Come find me. Slide in the DMs. Ask me business questions.
Same.
It's so good. It's so true. That's how we all connected was sliding in the DMs. I tried to not be as creepy as possible, but hey, it worked. I was creepy.
We love a good creeper though sometimes,
It worked. Well, Chris and Lori, thank you so much. This has been absolutely amazing. Appreciate you all. Obviously, all of you listening, thank you so much for your time. As always, time is the most valuable and important asset that we all have. We appreciate you all spending time with us. Go out and make it great.